On the morning of October 9th, 1856, a woman was sold outside the Montgomery Cotton Exchange for what would equal hundreds of thousands of dollars today. The auctioneer struck his hammer again and again until the crowd finally went quiet. When the sale ended, the buyer became sick, then signed the paperwork with shaking hands. No newspaper recorded what happened. No detailed record survived. The woman being sold never spoke during the entire event. Witnesses later said she stood calmly on the platform, looking at something far away, wearing an expression that almost looked like a smile, but not quite. The price broke every known record in the state. It was worth more than several working plantations combined, and far more than most men in that room would ever earn. Still, 6 bidders fought for her with a level of intensity that made no sense. The price rose fast, even though it should not have. It was clear that whoever bought her believed they would gain something much more valuable than money. People wondered what she knew, what could make one person worth more than any sale ever recorded in that region, and why 3 of the men who tried to buy her later died under strange conditions, while 2 others fled the state, as if running from something none of them could face. Before we continue with the story Montgomery tried to forget, the speaker pauses to ask the audience to subscribe and join the community that wants these stories uncovered instead of buried. After that, the story continues. Montgomery in 1856 was a city full of cotton wealth and confidence. Steamboats carried cotton up and down the Alabama River. Wealthy families lived in large homes along Dexter Avenue, built on money earned from land worked by enslaved labor. The city's population of about 28,000 was divided along every familiar line: race, freedom, and power. The divisions were obvious, yet more fragile than people admitted. The Cotton Exchange stood on Commerce Street. The building had columns meant to look important, but ended up resembling a stage set. Inside, about 200 men could gather to buy or trade property, land rights, futures, and human beings. People were sold there 3 days a week as if they were items on a list. Everything had a price. Everything was treated like numbers in ledgers. The auctioneer that morning was a man named Silas Whitmore. He was in his early 50s with a rough voice and a reputation for being efficient. He had run thousands of auctions and took pride in knowing how to read a room. He knew how to raise the price with pauses, questions, and tricks that pushed bidders past their limits. The morning went as usual until around mid-morning, when 3 men came in with a woman whose presence changed the entire mood. People did not fall silent right away, but their conversations shifted to a cautious tone. Everyone sensed something unusual. The woman seemed to be in her 30s or early 40s. Her features suggested mixed ancestry. She stood about 5'7", tall for the time, and held herself with calm confidence. She wore a simple gray dress and had her hair pulled back. What caught attention first were her hands. They were stained with ink and had calluses in places that showed she wrote often, not worked in fields. This should have been impossible, since enslaved people in Alabama were legally barred from learning to read or write. Whitmore stepped down from his platform to speak with her escorts. Witnesses close to him later said his face showed confusion, then disbelief, then something close to fear. When he returned, he held a sealed envelope. His hand shook slightly as he called the room to attention. People felt something important was coming. He explained that the woman had been labeled property number 47, with no name recorded. She was listed as 35 years old and had no history of field work or household labor. Someone from the crowd asked why she had any value at all. Whitmore announced an opening price of $8,000, a number that left the room silent. It was far more than skilled workers, black or white, free or enslaved, could earn in 10 years. Instead of lowering the price, Whitmore opened the envelope and read a sworn statement. The seller claimed the woman carried knowledge of high value, connected to finances, property, and personal matters. 5 witnesses had verified this knowledge. Her buyer would receive a private letter explaining what she knew and how to use it. The room shifted from curiosity to alarm. People wanted details. Whitmore continued reading. The statement said the woman had perfect recall of every document she had ever seen: ledgers, letters, contracts, wills, financial notes, and more. She could recite them exactly, page by page, even years later, with no mistakes. She could remember numbers, calculations, and details with total accuracy. The room fell heavy and silent. In a society built on paper agreements, debts, land claims, and deals often kept hidden, someone with perfect memory of those documents held enormous power. He kept reading. She had spent years in homes and businesses across the region where she saw private records people assumed were safe. She had seen account books, personal letters, loan agreements, property documents, and delicate financial information. If shared with the right people, these details could be extremely valuable. Chaos erupted. Some men shouted questions. Some looked afraid. Some rushed toward the exits, worried that their own secrets were in her memory. Whitmore waited for calm, then read the last part. According to the seller, the woman would give her full cooperation to her legal owner. She understood that her safety depended on her usefulness and her ability to stay discreet. The seller took no responsibility for how her information might be used. The opening bid stayed at $8,000. For several seconds, no one moved. Then a man named James DeLoqua raised his hand. Another man quickly followed. Bidding climbed rapidly. It no longer felt like a normal auction. People were driven by fear and the desire to control information that could change their futures. By $18,000, only 5 bidders were left. The rest watched, realizing the winner of this auction would gain dangerous power. Then a man near the wall announced a bid of $20,000. His identity would be debated for years. The other bidders dropped out one by one, each deciding the risk was too great. The auction ended. The winner stepped forward. He looked like a man in his late 40s, with the hands of someone who did not do physical labor. His clothes were expensive but not eye-catching. He seemed like someone who preferred not to be remembered. Finalizing the payment took about 90 minutes. While the paperwork was prepared and signed, the woman stood completely still. Several men tried to ask her questions about her past or what she knew. She did not answer any of them. When everything was complete, the buyer unlocked her wrist cuffs and handed her a shawl. She placed it on her shoulders calmly and walked with him out a side door. The crowd continued arguing long after they left, unsure what they had witnessed. 3 days later, people in Montgomery started searching for information about the buyer. No one could confirm who he really was. The bank verified the funds, but the account was connected to a timber company that no longer existed. The name Marcus Webb appeared nowhere else in official records. The witnesses listed in the seller's statement could not be found. A judge confirmed that a document had been notarized, but the record was sealed and unreachable. The woman's escorts were never identified either. Once people started looking into her background, they found something surprising. Her name appeared to be Delilah, though no one knew if that was given at birth or by an owner. She had lived in several households, often passed along through sales or inheritance. But she was always placed in homes and workplaces involved in legal matters, business dealings, or financial record keeping. She worked in an attorney's home, where she was often in the room while clients discussed private matters. She lived with Cotton Factor, who kept detailed books. She served in the home of a judge who stored important land documents. She worked for a banker who dealt with loans and collateral. Everywhere she went, she stayed quiet, efficient, and easy to overlook. People talked freely around her. They assumed she did not understand what she saw, but she had taught herself to read. How she learned remained unclear. She not only read, but remembered everything perfectly. The first person to document her ability was a plantation owner named Richard Thornhill, who bought her in 1853. She worked quietly for months until one night, he asked her where he had put a letter about a cotton shipment. She told him exactly where it was, then recited the entire content of the letter, including dates and numbers. He tested her repeatedly after that, each time with the same results. She remembered everything she had ever seen, even documents viewed only once. Thornhill quickly understood how powerful and dangerous this was. She knew debts, land boundaries, contract details, and errors that could be used against people. She knew who owed money, who had tried to hide agreements, and which documents could cause trouble if revealed. Thornhill kept her ability a secret for a year and used the information quietly to his benefit. He profited but grew paranoid. He locked her away when visitors came. He fired workers he thought might notice her value. His wife said he seemed unstable. Eventually, he tried to rent access to her knowledge, hoping to reduce danger by sharing the opportunity. Instead, it made everything worse. People wanted full control of her, not shared access. Threats followed. His property was broken into. A fire destroyed a warehouse. Someone even shot at him. He panicked. In late 1855, he sold Delilah to an intermediary for $12,000 and left the state with his family. He lived quietly under another name until he died. The intermediary was an attorney named Samuel Crawford, who handled delicate issues for wealthy families. He understood Delilah's value and the risk. After months of planning, he decided to auction her publicly, believing competition would raise the price and warn powerful people about how fragile their private documents truly were. He arranged everything carefully, but he misjudged the danger. Some information is too heavy for anyone to own. By the time the auction began, the damage had already started. The men in that room were bidding because they feared what would happen if someone else gained control of the woman with the perfect memory. The man who finally won her for $20,000 was named Marcus Webb, and that part was true. The rest of his identity was a careful invention. He wasn't a timber company owner and didn't run any business up north. He was something different. For years, he made his living by gathering private information, relying on paid contacts who fed him details people wanted kept quiet. He had been waiting for someone like Delilah for a long time. Webb understood that the auction wasn't just the sale of one unusual person. It revealed that perfect memory existed, and that one woman knew information that important men assumed would stay hidden in letters, contracts, and ledgers. He also realized something the seller had failed to consider. Once her ability became public, her life was in danger. Too many people had too much to lose. Webb's purchase wasn't just for gain. It was also an attempt to protect her, though even he wasn't sure if he wanted to save Delilah or the information she carried. He left Montgomery with her only hours after the sale, moving quickly in a hired carriage toward Tennessee. He had arranged a temporary safe place, a small farmhouse in Limestone County owned by someone who didn't ask questions. They arrived after dark on October 10th. Webb said almost nothing during the trip, and Delilah stayed silent, just as she had at the auction. When the door was locked and lamps were lit, Webb finally spoke to her as a person rather than property. He told her that the men who lost the auction wouldn't simply accept the outcome. Some of them knew she held their private information. They would try to buy her, threaten her, or try to harm her. "You become the most dangerous person in Alabama," he said. Delilah answered quietly, "I've always been the most dangerous person in Alabama." They just didn't realize it until now. Her tone forced Webb to rethink everything. He had assumed she was simply caught in a terrible situation because of her abilities. What she said next made him wonder if she had been planning this for years. When he hinted that she might have wanted the auction, she smiled. It was an expression witnesses had struggled to describe. It looked like calm satisfaction. She said that for years people had used her memory whenever they wanted something clarified or verified, then ignored her the rest of the time. She decided it was time to show them she wasn't a tool. She was someone whose knowledge could reshape their world. Knowledge requires payment, she told him, and now they would finally pay for everything she had stored in her mind. Webb asked what she meant by payment. Delilah looked out the window into the dark. She said the auction had changed everything. Now that people knew Perfect Recall existed, privacy would fall apart. How could anyone make deals or settle debts if they believed someone in the room might remember every word later? She said people had trusted systems built on secrecy, and once that secrecy vanished, their entire structure of power became unstable. She turned back toward Webb. "I'm not a weapon you can point," she said. "I'm a weapon that has already gone off." In the weeks that followed, Webb realized she was right. Montgomery's business community began falling apart. Men who had tried to buy Delilah demanded investigations into what she might know about their competitors. Others worried she held information about them. Anxiety spread quickly. After the auction, fear spread. Records were questioned, books vanished, and 3 bidders died or fled under suspicious circumstances. Marcus Webb and Delilah disappeared, sparking rumors about where she went. Years later, She resurfaced, offering Union officers precise information she had memorized in Alabama homes. Her reports helped weaken the Confederacy. Then she vanished again. A historian later met someone who knew her as Dinah, taught secretly by a Quaker woman. Delilah spent years gathering secrets, used them after freedom, and lived well. She left only traces behind, proving that knowledge can outlast power and shape history long after she's gone.